All right, good morning. Welcome. Glad you're here. Chris Pellerito with Mid-Michigan College. Happy and more than happy to host this morning. Thanks for your patience. We had a little bit of a technical issue. It wasn't my fault, although indirectly it probably was. This is why we're no longer going to do these live from this point forward, but thank you for being part of this one. I rarely, if ever, use the phrase, you're in for a treat, but you are this morning. Just the bit that I've heard in the conversation already. It's some cool stuff you're going to be hearing from these gentlemen this morning. Few quick thank yous right out of the gate. My way brighter colleague Beth is here. She's available to field your questions if you choose to send one in. Please do so. And next to her is my other super cool, bright colleague, Annette. She's going to assist Beth. And we've got an incoming audience, so you may see some stream in a few, or wander in a few. But we're glad that you're joining us from literally all over the state. And finally, I don't think I recognize him enough, but Noah, our video guru, is behind the camera today. I wish I could turn that camera around just for a moment and recognize the great effort that he does that allows us to share with you guys. Okay? Having said all that, we're going to charge ahead. I'm going to throw something out there very quickly, and then I'm going to get into letting our guests introduce themselves. If you choose to send in an answer to me, the first three, I'm going to send to you a mid t-shirt or a mug or something along that line that is, reasonably decent. Here's my question for you. I think I asked it indirectly last year, but some of you didn't hear it. The newest Supreme Court judge, Ketanji Brown Jackson, has what connection to criminal justice? It's not hard to find, but send me an answer and let me know who you are and where you're from, and we'll send something your way. The first three people that answer it correctly, you've got that coming your way. More importantly, you've got this coming your way. These three gentlemen here, I'm going to ask them to briefly introduce themselves. Then we're going to talk about, a bit of comparison and contrast with the academies that they're representing and leading. So if you don't mind, Tom, I'd like to start with you on your far left.
James Taylor. I'm with West Shore Community College Police Academy. I'm the Director of Criminal Justice. I started my career in '94 with Big Rapids City Police and ended as Undersheriff of Mecosta County in 2020.
My name is Mike Goodall. I'm the coordinator of the Delta College Police Academy. I actually started my career in 1990 with the Midland County Sheriff's Office, and I retired in 2017. I've been at the Delta College Police Academy for the last 6 years.
Christopher Perriott. I started my career as a law enforcement officer in 1994 with the City of Detroit. I then went to St. Clair Shores and finished my career, retired in the end of 2018. And then I started as the Director of Criminal Justice Programs with Kirtland Community College a little over a year ago.
Okay, so essentially the one commonality is each of you oversee a police academy. One in Kirtland, Grayling, one in West Shore, and one Delta College over in the Kochville Township, the Saginaw area. In any particular order or no particular order, let's talk a little bit about what's perhaps unique, or besides that, what is it? Describe your academy a little bit. I didn't know this until a few years recently, that there can be some basic philosophical differences between academies, but just briefly tell us and tell our audience a little bit about that in any particular order.
I believe our academy in Scottsville, Michigan, just outside Ludington, is something you'd call quaint. We're in a building that is out in our farm fields, and we offer a lot of hands-on training without distractions. We look for professional, self-disciplined students, try and identify their negatives, turn them into positives. and make them leaders when they go back into the law enforcement world.
How do you identify the negatives?
Through a lot of training, conversation, instruction. We do a lot of scenario-based training like all academies do.
Give us an example of a negative.
One of the ones that I think we deal with more now is just not being able to talk or initiate a conversation or initiate control of a situation and being a little set back. And that's what we encourage people from the beginning to get out and talk. You know, talk to your friends, you know, get outside your comfort zone and offer suggestions in your classes.
Mm-hmm. I would have hoped that was not a negative, but I could see that. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's hear about the other two.
I guess we'll go in order.
Go ahead.
Delta College, we've had a police academy since 1967. We are currently going to start our 112th academy in January. We're 17 weeks long, and in addition to the 594 hours that all academies provide training for as required through MCOLS, we add another 150 hours of training. It's training that we work with our local law enforcement agencies to develop what they see as important, and then we incorporate it into our program. And like I said, we develop, just like West Shore, people with zero law enforcement experience, sometimes very little life experience, and we develop them into what we feel will be a good law enforcement officer so they can take that next step and join an agency. You know, we are constantly evaluating and working on. I think one of the most important things we try to develop is a command presence. Okay, and by that mean it's how you carry yourself, how you talk to people, and you know, communication skills are paramount. We spend a lot of time teaching them how to shoot a gun, how to drive a car, how to defend themselves in the case of that they need to. But the one thing we don't have time for is interpersonal communication. And just like he said, that's a skill that you have to develop as you go out and work in the community. And it's not only just when you're responding to calls, it's getting out of the cars and talking to mm-hmm. store owners and the public mm-hmm. and kids and getting to learn your community.
And that's not easily done for anybody.
It's not easy in the beginning, but the more you do something,
sure,
the more you sensitize to it, the more comfortable you get with it, and then you
sure.
become, it becomes second nature to you.
Yes.
When I took over at Kirtland, I brought over 15 years of experience at the academy level. I taught for another academy downstate, and being involved in training, I teach throughout the country as well as I've been overseas and taught law enforcement officers. And one of the main issues that I've always tried to bring to what I've done is professionalism. And that's what I brought to Kirtland, is to teach young people how to be a professional law enforcement officer. Mm-hmm. It's a basic academy, but trying to teach them how to be a professional, how to carry themselves when they put on that uniform, the pride that they feel in that uniform, and the mindset they have when they go out and serve the public. And always to remember that they are a peace officer first, mm-hmm. And that they are there to serve those citizens that they swear an oath to. I've taken 3 oaths in my lifetime, 4 oaths in my lifetime, and I've never forgotten that oath and where that comes from. And being a professional, and that's what we have to be every day that we go down the street, no matter what's going on in our lives, mm-hmm. we have to be a professional.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of hearing it from each of you, but I'm going to ask the question anyways. One thing you could tell, we've got, based on who has logged into this or is going to log into the premiere in a week, the edited version of this, all told, we're reaching an audience of about 400 high school juniors and seniors, each of whom has identified an interest in CJ. You could tell them one thing to keep in mind or bring with them or have ready to go for academy success, what would it be?
I think that we were just talking about it, and there's actually 2, and that's first one is fitness. Mm-hmm. it's fitness for life. It's not fitness to get a job. And I think you need to remember that. A colleague I had stressed that, and I think I heard him say fitness for life every week, and it does mean something. The other thing is I think we need to put away technology and look around the world and identify things. Being a police officer for 27 years, I still look at every single license plate that goes by, every single occupant in a vehicle. It's an important part of law enforcement, and also reading a room, and so we need to put down technology and pay attention to the world around us.
Again, those two things, at least in my estimation, for an 18, 19, 20-year-old, are not easily done. Anything else?
I guess attending a police academy is a commitment, and I think you have to be physically prepared, but you also have to, if you're not organized, if you're not one of the people that are on time, you're going to struggle in an academy because we are very disciplined. We have an expectation that you're going to be there. If class starts at 6, and our PT starts every morning at 6:25, and in our interview when I talk to people, they know that I expect them there between 5:45 and 6 o'clock because they need to get into the classroom and get themselves situated for the day. We also have quite often people, they show up and they've forgotten half of their equipment because they're running around late in the morning. So we teach them, you have to be disciplined. When you get home, you have dinner, you prepare your uniform for the day, and either set it next to the door when you're walking out the door so you can grab it, or pack it in your car. Because, they show up and they've forgotten their boots, or they forgot, this isn't high school anymore where you forget your homework and you get a pass on it. We sanction our people for it because we want them to be successful when they get to the workforce, because you can't show up for work without your gun or without your badge or something like that. They're not going to take that. They're not going to appreciate it. So we start holding them very, very accountable very soon.
I would hope that would never happen, but I get it. I believe that could happen. but wait, what happens when they do show up and I forgot my boots? Are you done for the day? Do you go get them and try again?
We just had that happen, and we had 2 cadets that forgot their boots, and they had to wear, everybody had to wear, or forgive me, no, they forgot their tennis shoes for PT. So they bring their tennis shoes for PT, so we made them wear their boots. So everybody had to wear their boots.
Everybody.
For PT, the whole class wore, so because, from day one, you instill that team concept. We're all a team. When one of us screws up, we all screw up. If you're out on the street and your partner screws up, both of you could be injured or killed. So you're always a team. Everything's about teamwork and working together and making sure that, hey, if you've got someone in the class that is struggling, you need to help them and be a team. And I come from the military, and that was from day one. That was pounding in your head. It's a team. It's a team. It's a team. And when I went through the police academy, it was that it's teamwork. It's all about teamwork. You're not an individual. It's teamwork. So we discipline them as a team, and they understand that. So they quickly figure out who are the ones that might need some help, might be struggling, and you'll see where they'll start to help those folks.
How big are each of your cohorts? Like one academy group is how many students?
Last year we had 9. Currently we have 22 signed up.
Okay. How about you?
Our numbers we've had as low as 10 when I first started. Their numbers are up. I started this academy with, I think, 33.
Wow. How many?
This academy we have 17.
Okay. So it could vary each time, which is interesting. I hadn't considered that. If I'm in a group with a dozen, am I under that much more scrutiny, or it's going to be across the board, everybody's going to be scrutinized and guided pretty equally? You must have, it must be a challenge bringing in, God bless them, perhaps a few of them are pretty disciplined, but you must have a lot of them who come in and aren't ready for that level of discipline. How do you handle that?
I think they learn pretty quick because, like he said, they're a team.
Yeah.
And like my current class, my oldest recruit is 49 years old, and
Wow.
I actually have 2 18-year-olds that basically they graduated from high school in May of last year.
Yeah.
Started working for a local sheriff's office in the jail and got promoted to the road patrol. And so January 1st, they will be licensed police officers starting their training
At 19?
at 18.
Wow. Very cool. Okay. I don't want to misquote this. It's one of my favorites. And I'm asking all three of you. Steve Jobs once said, if you want to make everybody happy, don't be a leader. Go sell ice cream. Do the graduates of your academy, they're graduates, right? I mean, okay. The graduates of your academy, is that a prerequisite or a post-requisite when they're done? Do they have to be leaders?
For our academy, what we do is every week we put a new platoon guide in charge of the class. So we want to try to teach. One of the issues that I have is leadership at the patrol level. So in law enforcement, it's always looking towards your sergeant or your lieutenant for guidance. And especially today, with the critical incidents that patrol officers are facing, one of the items that we teach is leadership at the patrol level, so that patrol officer making those decisions. So you have to, we start from day one teaching them leadership. We have folks, military folks that come in that already have maybe a leadership background, and I usually start them first, so the others can see leadership and what needs to be done. But we instill that every week. It's somewhat different, and then our squad leaders, we just rotate people through so everyone gets a chance at leadership.
Anything you guys want to add?
I think that we strive to have them become leaders, and in that process, they're more professional, more well-rounded, and have more to offer. And it can be difficult from an administrative point. And last year, being my first academy, I looked towards the strongest ones in our group to talk to some of the ones that were having difficulty. And I think that made the difference. And I think the realization from day one as a recruit and day one as a police officer is more of a shock than anything. And then you find out what you're made of.
Real quick.
Okay.
We try to develop leadership, but not everyone comes in with the same skill set. You have
Sure.
some people that are natural born leaders that
Yes.
take charge and want to do things, and then you have people that are followers. And you identify the followers and you try to put them in situations where they have to actually take command or take lead. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not. You always do your best, but those are the people that may struggle when they get out on the street because they don't have what we talk about, that command presence. They don't know how they carry them. When they walk into a room, they don't carry themselves. That gives that air of confidence that they know what they're doing or something like that, kind of like a deer in headlights situation.
Are there mistakes, like common mistakes that you see consistently made with students that are coming into the academy?
I think we all do scenarios, and we have a lot of scenarios where they'll have a warrant arrest or you're going to effect an arrest because it's a domestic violence. And sometimes they get so fixated on the fact that they're going to arrest somebody that they fail to do the prerequisite stuff, like interview people, talk to, you're there on a assault and battery complaint, and where the suspect has a warrant. Well, they're already putting handcuffs on them and stuffing them in the car before they ever talk to the victim or anybody else and things like that. So you just have to, it's just procedural things that they just have to learn, to prioritize things and make sure they have all the information before they act.
So is a good percentage of the academy time involving scenarios, typically?
I think last year we had probably 40 hours of scenarios, and this year we'll probably have 20 hours of scenarios. And that is a considerable amount of time, and you try and have different groups that run through different scenarios so everybody's working at the same time.
Okay. I'm not a negative person. I think you know that. But I do my wife often reminds me that, they need to know the reality. So I'm going to go there with this question, and I sent it to you in advance, but forgive me if it sounds like, well, wow, I can't believe he's going there. What's the worst part about law enforcement?
Politics.
That was a
Politics
quick
inside the
answer.
agency. That was the worst. I worked for 2 different agencies, kind of like James, and I worked for one of the most violent urban agencies in the country, and then I went right across the street to a suburban agency, and it was the same. It's politics. It's that, all I wanted to do, I wanted to go out and do my job.
Yeah.
And I would much rather have dealt with the public than coming back and dealing with the administration of my department. And that was across the board. But it's one of those monsters you have to deal with in law enforcement. It's always there. And sometimes it got a little easier when there was a regime change, and sometimes it didn't. But I think that was, if I look back at my career, that if I could do away with one thing, it would be the politics within the agency.
So a number of the viewers today are going to end up in that position. Got any suggestions as to how to handle it? I mean, you've already acknowledged it's going to be there.
Get out of the station. Just get out of that. That was my favorite thing to do, was go on the road and work. I loved being out there on the road. I spent a majority of my career in a scout car in uniform, and being out there and dealing with the public, getting out of the station. That was the one big thing. It
Makes
seemed
sense.
when you worked in the station, that's where you had a lot of folks that were watching you and micromanaging you. But once you got on the road, you were by yourself, and you could take a deep breath and you could do your job. And that was the best thing for me, was just getting out of the station and getting out on the road.
Anything else you want to add to that?
I'd like to add, when you start your career, or even if you change departments, don't believe everything everyone's telling you about the administration, the other officers and deputies, because that, being a patrolman and then ending up being an administrator, it goes both ways. The officers are a pain, the administration's a pain, and then the administration has their pains back and forth. So don't believe everything somebody tells you. Do your own research, and do not become a part of the rumor mill,
Right.
because you'll be labeled as that, and that's no place to be. Get out and do your job, just like he said.
Sounds a little like higher ed too.
Yeah.
The administration's a pain, but never mind. What else?
And I think the difference too is, from a patrol level, a lot of patrolmen are looking at things and how do things affect me personally, and what's best for me individually. Not always, but sometimes. And where you're in an administration, like Tom and I were, the number 2s at the sheriff's office that we worked for, you have to look for what's best for the agency and not for the individual. And sometimes those goals don't necessarily mesh with what the deputies or officers see. So a lot of times you can't always communicate to it, but when you can, you share information, and this is the decision that's made. This is why we made it, and move forward with it. Not everyone's going to agree with it, but you just have to do what you have to do. sometimes.
And you learn that. That's the experience, and you learn that that it's what's good for the agency, what's good for the jurisdiction, and you're a part of that. And you either go with the flow or go flip burgers at McDonald's. You just accept that, and you just, hey, that's still the way it is. You just deal with it, and you learn that over time. So.
We talked a little bit last year about recognizing a community, and most importantly, a community that is accepting and embracing of their law enforcement. What we didn't talk a great deal about was, how do you know? I mean, not everybody's going to get to work in their hometown, and not everybody's going to want to work in their hometown. How do you know? How would one evaluate? Okay, there's an opening in Whitehall. There's an opening in Remus. There's an opening in Mount Pleasant. How do you know what the community's like if you're not from there, if you're not part of that?
I guess you need to do your research.
Yeah.
If you're interested in working, if you're from the Mount Pleasant area and you always want to stay here, reach out to the local law enforcement agencies, work the sheriff's office, whether it's Mount Pleasant Police Department or the Tribal Police Department. A lot of times they'll let you do ride-alongs, things like that. So you can go out and you can meet some of the officers. They'll take you around the community, show you the good, the bad, and make a decision that way. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're just in need of a job, and you accept a job, and then you go and then you start doing your own research, or you interact with the public and make up your own mind. If it's a good fit and you really like it, you stay. If it's not a good fit, then you start looking for another agency. And in our day, when I first started, I came to the sheriff's office in Midland. I stayed my entire career there. I never wanted to leave. It's not so much that way now. A lot of people are taking a job with a local agency, and then maybe the wages are better down the street, so they'll go down there and work and things like that. So you have to do what's good for you.
A lot of the viewers likely and now are in our audience, welcome, good morning, glad you made it over safely. A lot of the viewers, the listeners that are eavesdropping on this conversation, and you're welcome to stick your hand up and politely interrupt us, okay? Okay, you knew that, right? Stomp once for yes, twice for no. Okay. A lot of them, I frequently see this. Beth and Annette and I see this often. Kids come here and to Mid-Michigan College. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know what's on the menu. Therefore, it's really difficult to make decisions or choose paths. How do you help them through the academy with that? I mean, you've got a lot of options in law enforcement. How do you help them figure that part out?
I think for me, I drew from what I was passionate about, and I grew up in Big Rapids. We knew a lot of police officers, and I enjoyed the time I had with the police officers. Then I went into community college at Lansing in accounting. I don't know how that happened. And then I had a great conversation with a sociology professor there and transferred to Ferris and got my 4-year degree.
And accounting's worthwhile.
What's that?
Accounting's worthwhile,
Yes.
just for the record.
Yes. My wife is in accounting.
There you go.
And then I started in my hometown, and I think that it was probably the most proudest thing I did. And so it was great to work in my hometown and have the support of people. And it being a college town, we had a lot of people that were from out of the area.
Sure.
And people would say, "You don't even live here." And I remember being told that one time, and I said, "No, I do. Actually, 4 blocks from here. I grew up."
A lot of the CTE students get the good fortune of a little better exposure to the options, but you must have, I say kids, they're not all kids, certainly. None of them are kids. But you must have cadets that think this is what they want, but do you have some that come in and I don't know that this is what I want by the time they get into it?
Academic program, yes. The academic program.
Yeah.
The police academy, no, but the academic program for sure. I think a lot of them too, they watch TV and they think that, they're going to go right into CSI or, you get them in there, this is what I want to do, and it's so you got to kind of give them a reality check and say, well, if you get your 4-year degree, then you can get into, this agency and get into that. But if you're talking about a police department, you're going to work the road, or you're going to work in the jail, and then eventually you can work your way up to what you want to get into, But just maybe give them a little reality check to what it's really like in the profession.
Give us an example of somebody in the last, I don't know, few years, 10 years ago, whatever. I know Beth and I, sometimes we do this in our profession. Give us an example of somebody that stands out in your mind who, having gone through the academy, like, I don't know what you're going to be doing someday, but I know you're going to be super successful at it. You must see that. Can you share an example of that kind of thing? You don't even have to name names.
I think in the academy we have, starting in January, there's 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And we haven't got to the academy yet, but I think they're going to.
You're already seeing it.
Already seeing it, and because they're leaders, they're disciplined, they can communicate, they have all the tools that they need to start and excel.
What do I need to do on the way in? if I want to be a better leader and want to communicate better and I want to be more disciplined, what do I need to do on the way in? Practice that?
Get outside your comfort zone. We talked about that. You know,
Mhm.
interact with people, not just your friends. Go up and talk to people, clerks at a store, things like that, just to do things. When people are in the academy, we spend the entire time evaluating them. We're always watching. We're always looking. Like you said, we look for weaknesses. We look for strengths. Because right now, most of our recruits that are coming to us are sponsored, which means an agency's already hired them. But we do get a fair number of people that are putting themselves through the academy that are looking for jobs. So we're constantly evaluating them, because when they go to an interview and if that agency wants to hire them, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to call one of the three of us and say, hey, we're looking at one of your recruits. What can you tell us about this person? And so you kind of go back, and the one thing about this job is the only thing we have is our reputation. So we tell everyone when we sit down at the interview with you is, if somebody calls and asks, what's your name right there? Yep. Alex. Hey, what can you tell us about Alex? I'll tell Alex. Alex, the only thing I'm going to tell the potential employer is what I've observed from you from our time together. So if you've come into the academy, you're on time, you work hard, you're respectful, you carry yourself with confidence, that's what I'm going to tell them. Okay? If you come in late, you always make excuses, you don't have your work done, I'm going to tell them that too, because part of our job is working with local law enforcement to help find you a job. And in order to be effective, we have to build relationships with these agencies. So if I go in and misrepresent who Alex is, and I say Alex walks on water and he's God's gift to law enforcement, and then he gets to that agency and he's not, they're never going to call me again. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not worth it. It's just like, so we're always working with the student. We're always pushing them to, go get outside their comfort zone and develop that leadership skills.
I'm jumping back to a question I asked a minute ago. It was interesting how quickly you responded, the way you responded. Worst part about criminal justice? Don't sugarcoat it.
For me, crimes against children, crimes against animals, but the ultimate, absolute worst thing I ever had to do was deliver death notifications. Okay? Going up to a house to an unsuspecting person to tell them that one of their loved one has been killed, either a victim of a crime, of a crash, at their own hands, something like that, that they're no longer living and they're never going to have an opportunity to see them again. Absolutely worst thing in law enforcement.
Anything else? I mean, those two are difficult enough.
Yeah, I think the one thing, we aren't built of armor. And I think one thing that always stuck in my mind is during a traffic stop or a contact, somebody would yell at me as if they knew me, and they didn't know me, and say things about myself, my mother, my wife, and I always took that opportunity to introduce myself to them and start a new conversation with law enforcement. I think that it's important because it sets people back, because they think for a second, no, I don't know who you are, and people come from other communities and expect something from the police that in our community we don't do. Every single community is different. You can go across the county line, and the city agencies and the sheriff's office are different.
Okay. I'm throwing it out there. I sent this to you in advance, not trying to light any fires or anything like that, but I hear this, so I'm asking you. Are today's police militarized? You're shaking your head pretty quickly, no.
No.
Why do I hear out there that people feel like that's a problem and that's why we need to defund police and things?
Well, the program that the federal government has, the agencies can get equipment through the DRMO program, and you can get really anything you want, from armored vehicles to tourniquets, and it's an opportunity for agencies, especially agencies that don't have the budget to acquire that equipment. they can get it. And I think probably after Ferguson, Missouri, you saw a push within certain sectors of society that because of the equipment that law enforcement had, they were too military. I spent over 18 years in SWAT, and I learned very quickly that that equipment can be the difference between life and death for not only law enforcement, but for innocent citizens. We have priorities of life, safety priorities in law enforcement, and that equipment helps to protect citizens as well as law enforcement, as well as suspects. And you know, when you're looking at an armored vehicle that costs $750,000, you can ask these gentlemen because they dealt with budgets. I didn't. I mean, that's a lot of money to come out of your budget.
Sure.
Northern Michigan, the tactical team in Northern Michigan, the Grand Traverse area, they just purchased a Bearcat, and it was the uproar from the certain sectors of the community that they were militarizing the police department. It's not. It's just a piece of equipment that is needed to protect life, and that's the way you have to look at it. It's not like we're driving around in, you know, an M1 tank or things like that. It's pieces of equipment that we use to protect life. You know, and and people within society, the citizens within society, need to understand that. That's why we have that equipment.
Makes sense. Thank you for articulating that. Thoughts on that one?
No.
Okay.
I think
Okay, that was pretty. Yeah, that was pretty clear on that. Just for review for our guests here and those who are watching, just to review again. You prefer Jim, James?
sure.
Jim, West Shore Police Academy. West Shore. Mike, Delta College Police Academy, and Chris, Kirtland Community College Police Academy. Kirtland, Delta. It's not that we don't want Lansing here. Next time we'll get Lansing in, but we wanted to cover, you know, the northerly spot in the states. If you note an aptitude, like a strength, or you hear that you've got somebody in your academy that says, you know, I kind of think I'd like to be involved with detective work or investigating, or I might want to head down that forensics path. I really like science. I think I can handle the rigor, and I'm willing to put in the time. Do you kind of encourage that? Do you kind of push them that way, or how does that part go?
A detective would be a promotion. Okay, so if you want to become a detective, you have to start as a patrolman. You're not going to graduate college, go through an academy, and jump right into a detective bureau. Okay, you have to develop skills on the road, whether it be investigating, interviewing, observation. And the other thing is you want to build relationships with the community, because those will help you if you do get into the detective bureau when you start talking to people. If you're interested in forensics, a lot of times if we sit down with young people that, hey, I really want to be, you know, we talked about being a CSI or something like that. The reality of it is the crime lab from the Michigan State Police teach at our academies and teach. Most of those aren't police officers. They're biologists. They have more science backgrounds than they do. So if I have a young person come in and say, I want to be a CSI, then I'm going to say, well, you might want to look in this program here, and then, or go and make an appointment and talk to the people at the crime labs and let them know, because those jobs are few and far between. The Michigan State Police have, I think is there 3 crime labs in the state or 4? Grayling, Bridgeport, Detroit, there must be 4, one in the UP too.
Grand Rapids has their own.
Right.
Yeah, but a lot of, like our agency, Midland County, we didn't have our own crime scene. I'm guessing Big Rapids didn't. We relied on the state. We handled most of our things, but on the big cases, we would call in and request assistance from Michigan State Police. Some of your bigger agencies down south in the metro area may have them, but those jobs are few and far between. They cover multiple counties, so that's a very coveted job, and the turnover is low. So I always try to point out the reality. I don't want to bust anybody's bubble, but you said there's very few people that actually work in that field.
Mhm.
So.
Is there an ideal candidate, an ideal recruit coming into the academy?
I would say no. Everyone has different strengths, different weaknesses. You don't need to be 6 foot tall, built to muscle, and be able to jump a tall building in a single bound. If you have good communication skills, you have empathy, the ability to listen. We have recruits that come in, just like I talked to former athletes, we've had recruits that are breaking the 105-pound mark. Okay, and those people that weighed 105 pounds had good communication skill and tenacity. So they weren't afraid if they had to face a situation that was perilous or they thought that they still stood up and they did their job. And I've also had people on the larger size who didn't have that command presence that, had never been into a conflict in their life. I mean, I guess I would ask you, when was the last time you had a conflict with somebody, and how did you resolve it, that type of thing? There's some people that have never been into a physical altercation in their life. Not saying that you have to, but, sometimes life experience.
We touched on this last year, but I'm going to ask again because it's important and it's relevant. Regretfully, it's a little bit timely too. There are folks in the world that dislike you simply because you have a uniform on. How do you teach your academy cadets to handle that? And is it something you even get into? Okay.
I think it's just life experience. I know when I go on vacation or anywhere, I don't hide the fact that I'm a retired police officer, and I've hopefully changed a lot of people's minds. And I think that it's that one-on-one conversation that people are missing, and that's why they have those beliefs, because they may believe something that they see on the TV or in their hand. And I think that I think police officers now, it's important to have those conversations and go out and find them. Be a part of your community, and be a part of your community by volunteering, and being part of your community by doing talks at Chamber of Commerce or inviting Chamber of Commerce to your agency and getting out there. Just a quick thing, when I started over in Mason County, coming from Costa County, I was curious about the support that they had over there, and it took one lunch with a detective from Mason County Sheriff's Office that we went to a restaurant, and he knew absolutely every single person. Everybody called him by name. And that says a lot about the support of law enforcement and the job they're doing.
So if I were completing your academy and I said to you, well, I've got an opportunity. I'm going to be hired by Mason County, but I don't want to live over there. I'm okay commuting. What would your response be?
I would highly discourage it.
Yeah, I figured that.
In fact, when I started my job over there, my family's still in Big Rapids. Our goal was to purchase a house there within a year or two, and we just purchased a house about a year to the day of hiring, and that's one of the things that I stressed is I wanted to, even as a police academy, I wanted to be a part of the community.
Cool. We're running low, we're on time, but I definitely want to ask the question, where do you see law enforcement going in the next 5 years? Because that's a really relevant piece of time for this audience.
I'd say technology. You're gonna see even more technology coming into the job, and getting even more hands off. I mean, every time we turn around, we're getting more technology, and then also mental health. We're seeing more and more. We just included another 20 hours into the academy with behavioral health, and I think you're going to see that as well. You're going to see more to do with mental health and technology. Those are going to be two big ones that are coming down the pipeline.
Makes good sense. Anything else?
I see a huge challenge for the three of us. The state just supported spending $30 million, and it's to hire 1,250 police officers over the next 3 years. It's a challenge for us to produce 1,250 professional, disciplined police officers, and I think that's where it's going.
It's a good point. Did you hear that? 30 million?
30 million.
30 million.
Wow.
But you got to have the bodies. You can throw
Yes.
$30 million at it, but
No,
you don't have the bodies.
Sure. Sure.
I think it's going to open up a pool, because we were kind of talking about the change in recruits. If our recruit class is 20 people, it used to be we would have 15 of those would be pre-service, and pre-service are people that are putting themselves through the academy, who have gone to college, got a degree, and they're working in the law enforcement. Then you would have 5 people that would be sponsored, and those are people that are hired by an agency, they're paying their tuition, and they're actually getting a wage while they're in the academy. That's very cost prohibitive, because you throw in your tuition for the academy, which is, let's say, $8,000, plus you have to go without working for 17 weeks. So if you're sponsored, you're paying that person a wage. So you may have $25,000, $30,000 invested in a recruit before they ever put on your uniform to see what they're like. So it was a rarity. We're now seeing it kind of flip-flop. In my current class, I started with 33. 28 of them were sponsored, and 7 were putting themselves through, because the change is people aren't investing in themselves to go and work in law enforcement anymore. So this money will now allow these agencies that previously couldn't afford to invest in tuition and wages, it's given them an opportunity. So their pool, and we talked about this, when we first started hiring, you would get 60 applications for one person, or even 100 for one job. Now you're getting, if you're lucky, you're getting 5 applications for one job. And then you have to act faster. In the good old days, like when I got my job, it took them 4 to 6 months to complete the process, from the interview to the background to the medical and everything else.
Wow.
We're now seeing people where you're walking in for an interview with a local agency, and you're walking out on the first interview with a conditional offer of employment. They're still doing their backgrounds, and they're still doing the medicals, but what they're saying is we like you, we want to hire you. As long as you meet the criteria of our agency, you're going to have a job with us.
I teach here a little bit sometimes, and we talk about that early in the semester, the power of asking, and I'm hearing that this morning, even before the camera was on, talking about that kind of thing, going in, being willing to ask for a ride along, being willing to ask for, an informational interview, that kind of thing. Mike? Yes? Wait. Tell me your first name again. Jason. Mike, thank you. I'm not big on names. We're all equal here. I knew that. Jason. That's going to be in perpetuity. They're going to see people are going to see me muff that punt. Jason, before we shut down the live feed, any super pressing question you'd like to ask? We're going to ask a few more later, but before we shut that down, anything like the other 300 that are listening?
Through the academy, you have to have an associate's degree or the ability to obtain that degree upon completion of the academy. And I know Delta does, and Mid, you can actually, if you work with a counselor and advisor, you can actually get your associate's degree and your MCO's licensing all in a 2-year period. Right now, with that $30 million right now out there, that's a game changer. So if you have an interest in law enforcement, you want to get some experience, but now would be the time to start applying to these agencies, okay? Go in, ask questions, do ride-alongs, ask, they get a feel for you. They get to know you a little bit. That can make or break you. If you go in and you do a good job, you show up, you're dressed appropriately, you conduct yourself well, they may say, hey, this guy's really sharp, we should take a look at him. It could end up as a job opportunity. We just finished scenarios, and we had one of my college volunteers started interacting with a couple of my evaluators from a local agency. and they got to talking, and they liked him, and they actually interviewed him, and they're now sponsoring him in the next academy. And this all transpired in 3 weeks. So what I would tell you is, if you have an interest in law enforcement, I would start applying now, because they are considering, hiring people and sponsoring. So.
The question was asked, how do you deal with really bad trauma, did you say? Okay, severe.
I think I can look back at personal experience. I've had several close friends that were killed in the line of duty. One of my academy classmates was killed in the 7th Precinct in Detroit, and to walk up and to see that person. And for me, I learned, I went through a progression in my life and how I dealt with that, and I dealt with it in the wrong way at first, and then I learned to talk. One of my best friends is a pastor in Detroit, and I talk to him on a daily basis because it helps me to deal with what I have experienced and what we've all have seen as police officers over a quarter century. The good and the bad of society, and you learn how to talk and express what you're feeling inside, because cops, we're tough. Mike talked about, we have that armor, and we don't like to show our feelings, and you have to realize we're all human beings, and the best way to deal with trauma and deal with life is to actually talk about it to someone, to actually sit down and your agencies all have someone you can talk to, and it's anonymous. But I befriended a pastor, and he and I taught together at the academy level, and just became incredibly good friends. And we just started talking one day, and it was amazing how good I felt afterwards. Mm-hmm. And that's what I learned, is just to talk about it. And that's how I deal with it.
Thank you. Okay, last question for the live session, and then we're going to shut that down. We're not done with questions, okay? But you guys are going to stick around for a little bit. A number of those that are tuning in right now have to catch buses and head back to high schools and things like that. I usually lead with this question, but I deliberately didn't with you guys because I knew you could handle it. And for me, it might be the most important question of the morning. There are 50 or so here. There are 200-300 tuning in. A number of them are going to tune in later. But here's the question of the morning for me. Why would a student today consider law enforcement?
I think you have to have a strong sense of community. We always ask, why do you want to work in law enforcement? I want to help people, that type of thing. You want to serve. You want to make the place you live or the community that you serve a better place for people. So I think you have to have that commitment to go out every day and interact with people and try to make a little positive change every day. You're not going to change everything in one incident. You just want to go out, and if you spend 12 hours in a patrol car, at the end of the day, you want to say, what did I do today to make this community a little bit better? And as long as you made something, a little change, you can always feel good about what you've done for that day.
Anything you want to add to that one? That was good.
I would say the same about community, and also just the self-pride that you've had of doing a job like that, just like building a building or a car. There's a lot of pride that goes into it, and seeing your community support you, and it's great.
Last one.
I agree with Mike. I mean, it's you understand that you're not going to be able to save the world in 8, 10, 12 hours, but you can do just a little bit just to make that community a little better, and it's just a variety of things that you can do. I mean, just that call you get in the middle of the night, and somebody got locked out of their house and they need help, or somebody needs a light bulb change, an elderly person. It's amazing just the variety of tasks that you have. It's not about just driving around making square circles and, You know, I mean, you're a plumber, you're an electrician, you know, you're everything. Because when they call 911, at that moment in time, that's the biggest crisis in their life.
Yeah.
And that's the way you have to look at that, you know. So, you know, you show up and hey, listen, you know what, I was able to do this for this citizen and help them, and that was my good deed for the day.
I know the answer to this last question, and I know I said that was the last question, but I'm going to ask this one anyways. It's a yes or a no. Do you love what you do?
I would do it again for 50 years. I wish I could.
Same thing?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Greatest job in the world.
Greatest job in the world.
Greatest job in the world. I would
No hyperbole there.
None. I'm third
Cool.
generation cop, so.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I loved it. I just loved it. I'm just like these two gentlemen. Unfortunately, with age, your body starts to give out and you can't do the job anymore. But
That's
if I
what they
could,
tell me.
It sucks. It sucks getting old. But I love it. I love the job. Love it.
Cool. Well, none of us are eligible for motherhood, so I guess law enforcement will have to do. Okay. We're going to wrap this live session up. You guys stay here. But very, very quickly, thank you again, Beth and Annette. I outkick my coverage all the time, and they cover for me all the time. And Noah, you rock. You speak a language that is really kind of cool. And thank you for allowing for this to work. Randy Travis. Anybody know who Randy Travis is? Whew, a few. Okay, regardless, country singer. Randy Travis said, it's not what you take when you leave this world behind you, it's what you leave behind you when you're gone. So there's power in being grateful also. So thank you, gentlemen, for doing what you do. Not just for being here, thank you for doing what you do. Thank you guys for being part of this, and we'll see you next time.